Folks, the sale of baby food pouches has increased by 900% in the United States in the last 10 years. In fact, 50% of all baby food now comes in a pouch. So, the question is, are baby food pouches okay for babies and toddlers? I have a few things you need to know. There are some good reasons to use pouches. In fact, pouches are super convenient. They are easy to refrigerate, easy to take on the go with you when you're traveling, easier to get more fruits and vegetables into your baby or toddler's diet, and a whole host of other reasons. Another one that comes to mind is that they are easy to refrigerate when you've only partially eaten them. But there are several downsides to using baby food pouches, and I want to review those for you so you can make an informed decision for your family. A recent study came out that looked at baby food pouches and whether or not they were compliant with the World Health Organization's guidelines for nutrition and for marketing. And here's what they found. They found that 2/3 of baby food pouches did not meet the nutritional guidelines set up by the World Health Organization. And they also found that none of the baby food pouches matched their marketing guidelines. So let's dive into this just a wee bit more. You've heard me talk here before about the high nutrient needs of infants and toddlers, particularly in the first 2 years of life. And so from a nutrition standpoint, you really do want to be mindful of sources of iron, vitamin D, and DHA. Those are priority nutrients for this first 2 years of life. You also want to offer minimal sugar and minimal salt to your baby and your young toddler. Again, these are nutrients that don't help their health, and when we think about all the nutrients that young children need, sugar and salt really don't fit into the mix. So this study found that many of the baby food pouches had fruit as the first ingredient, and fruit has a source of natural sugar called fructose, which is not a bad thing for your child. However, when pouches start with fruit, they tend to be sweeter. And remember, the other thing that we're trying to do in these early years of life is to develop healthy food preferences. And so if a young child is getting a sweet flavor day after day, meal after meal, they can shape their preference to be more for sweetness. The other thing is that I really encourage you to turn the package over so you can look at the list of ingredients and see if they match what the description is on the front of package. So again, sometimes baby food pouches will start with apple and pear, and then they might have a grain like oatmeal, and then there might be some vegetables like green beans or green peas. Sometimes we look on the back of the label and fruit is listed first, and then it's water, and then a grain, and then a vegetable. But the front side of the pack might call it a vegetable blend. That is not what we're seeing, and this is why it's so important to look at the back of the ingredient list so that you know what you're getting and making sure it matches the front label. So, if you're buying a vegetable blend, the first ingredient should be a vegetable. The second ingredient should be a vegetable, not a fruit. And so this disconnect is something that's very important to be aware of. So I just encourage you, if you're buying baby food pouches, turn the package over and look at the ingredient list and make sure what it says there matches what's on the front of the package. So if you are using baby food pouches, here are a few tips you can use to make sure you're using them appropriately. Number one, baby food pouches were not made to be sucked on. So that spout is not something you should be putting your baby's mouth on. Why? Because it changes the oral motor muscle development in the mouth, and that can affect language development. So how are you supposed to use these pouches? You're supposed to squeeze the pouch onto a spoon and then spoon feed your baby. The other tip number 2, is don't overuse pouches. Babies should be on pureed food for maybe a month or two. Then they should advance to foods that have more texture. Again, we're developing those muscles in the mouth so that they can chew and handle more textured food, but also so they can develop their language. One way you can make these baby food pouches work for you and your baby is to squeeze them into a bowl and add more texture. So you might add some oatmeal, baby oatmeal, or you might work in some ground beef if you're advancing along in textures. So you can use them and mix them with other foods while you build your baby's ability to handle more textures. One of the things I see is that parents really rely on these. They might be giving 3 or 4 baby food pouches a day, thinking that their baby's meeting all their nutrient needs, when in fact they may not be. So remember that study showed that 2/3 of baby food pouches did not match the nutritional requirements and recommendations from the World Health Organization. So it's really important to remember, baby food pouches are okay, but you want to incorporate them in a way that allows your baby to advance along in foods and get more complex textures. But you also want your baby to be able to learn how to eat. So learn to take that spoon and put it in their mouth. Use baby-led weaning where they can hold strips of food safely and put them in their mouth and gnaw on them. Eventually, by 9 months, your baby really should be eating chopped foods, small crackers that can melt in their mouth. We're really moving along in texture. So the message is, don't rely on baby food pouches for everything that your baby needs, nutritionally or in the process of learning how to eat. Of course, you always want to monitor your baby when they're eating. It doesn't matter if they're eating purees off a spoon, it doesn't matter if they're eating small chunks of food as they've gotten older. You always want to be there to monitor your baby, to be there in case they choke. Now, choking is not super common. Gagging may be more common, but children who gag are really learning how to manipulate food in their mouth and manage it in their mouth. But it is always, always, always important to be there with your child, not only to monitor them, but to have community around eating and to make it a social event. Always have your baby sit when they're eating. This supports their normal ability to learn how to chew and manipulate food in their mouth and swallow it safely. If they're running around eating, crawling around eating, the risk for choking increases. So always have your baby sit when they are eating. Between 6 and 8 months, your baby should begin to try finger foods. So at 6 months, babies can hold a piece of food in their palm like this. They also rake food across the tray. They rake it and they can put it into their mouths. At around 8 months, they develop the pincer grasp, where they can go and they can pick up a piece of cereal and put it in their mouth. So you see, if you're relying on baby food pouches for all your baby's nutrition, you can stunt their development. You can interfere with their progress in learning how to eat. So I'm not saying that baby food pouches are bad and you can't have them. I'm saying that you want to incorporate them into an overall dietary plan for your young child that includes all the nutrients they need, as well as a plan for advancing their feeding skills, their eating skills. I have more on all of this in my book called The Smart Mom's Guide to Starting Solids. You should check it out. That's it for today, folks. I hope this information about baby food pouches is helpful to you. I have more information over on thenourishedchild.com and, of course, in my book, The Smart Mom's Guide for Starting Solids, as well as my other book, Fearless Feeding. I'll see you next time.